Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Shivani Singh. NITI Aayog's 11th Governing Council meeting, chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, began today to deliberate on the government's approach for including human development with the goal to attain the vision of Viksit Bharat by 2047. The Prime Minister has in fact highlighted India continues to move forward on its growth trajectory with confidence and determination amid global uncertainty and instability. As India progresses towards achieving the vision of Viksit Bharat, the country's collective responsibility becomes even greater. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said while chairing the 11th meeting of the Governing Council of the NITI Aayog. The Prime Minister has emphasized that India has signed free trade agreements with many countries to create new opportunities for growth and exports. He said that India's demographic dividend is a historic opportunity that we cannot afford to lose. The Prime Minister said that women-led development is a cornerstone of the vision of Viksit Bharat. He said, and I'm quoting here, "Guided by the spirit of cooperative federalism, we are looking to work together to accelerate India's development journey. The collective efforts of the centre and the states will play a pivotal role in realizing our shared vision of Viksit Bharat." Now, the Council takes up the inclusive human development framework anchored around four core pillars, which is foundational human capital and future-ready skills, productive employment, entrepreneurship and decentralized growth, health, nutrition and well-being, and equity and dignity for all. Joining us on this broadcast is Mr. Harish Bijur, who's the brand guru and founder of Harish Bijur Consults. And I welcome you, sir, on this broadcast to discuss this. Thank you so much for your time and for speaking to NewsX. Mr. Bijur, I want to obviously start off with how are you viewing this brand that our Prime Minister has in fact created for the country, which is Viksit Bharat 2047. Obviously, we are looking at something which is decades away, but how do we move towards it, sir?
Well, Prime Minister Modi has actually put together a goal, and I think a goal which says 2047 typically signifies 100 years of India. And I think that's a terrific goal to follow. And Viksit Bharat is certainly something all of us want. And I think this meeting has kicked off very well because you're really talking about getting together the central government, the NITI Aayog, and of course the chief ministers, lieutenant governors of the various states. That's really good because, you know, this is an era of cooperative federalism and must not become an era of combative federalism.
So obviously coordination is of utmost importance, but I want to understand, sir, one of the four pillars that was discussed today is future-ready skills. Historically, India has been branded globally as a cost-effective back-office IT hub. Now, what structural rebranding is required to pivot India's global image into becoming, you know, the premier capital for high-end innovation, for AI leadership, and also deep tech talent, sir?
You know, I have a contrarian viewpoint on this, which is to say that, you know, whenever we talk about future-ready skills, if you look at those three words in a phrase, we tend to think that these future-ready skills are only at the top of the pyramid. I don't look at it that way. I do believe future-ready skills for a locale like India lies at the bottom of the pyramid. Take, for instance, our entire focus on AI, quantum readiness, and anything that's related to technology and anything that's related to gig work of many, many kinds, and mind work. I think we should move away from that. That will anyway happen. The private sector is great at creating formats at this end. I think the government sector must focus at the bottom of the pyramid. And I do believe, and this is my request to Prime Minister Modi ji, to really focus on the bottom end. Because, you know, future-ready skills means the future, within 3 to 5 years, we're not going to have plumbers available in India itself. So imagine what's going to be the state of the world. Electricians, gas repairers, people who do service of different kinds. These areas are getting vacated. for people wanting better skills, engineering skills, etc. So I think the hands-on skills is also a future-ready skill. And I would definitely say each of our states have a big role to focus there. Otherwise, we're going to have starvation of skills to even run India, leave alone run the world. The beauty of it is we're such a big country. If we actually skill, we can export these skilled laborers outside, and they're going to be the new blue collar and white collar workers of the future. Because blue collar and white collar doesn't exist in air conditioned rooms anymore. It exists at the grassroots of actual hands on work. Because AI is going to replace a lot of people, and as those people get replaced, these skills are going to become very, very vital. So, future ready, definitely we must become.
That's a very pertinent point that you're raising, because even the NITI Aayog is pushing heavily for a decentralized growth, not just in cities but in villages. And I want to understand, how do we then build that strong individual economic identity for, say, for example, a tier 2 or a tier 3 city, so that they can evolve from just being feeder towns into more self-sustaining powerhouses, because we are looking at a Viksit Bharat, not just Viksit cities.
Absolutely. And when you say Bharat, it really means the hinterland of this country, where our real people live, and not the mind workers and the people who work with their brains and on computers. So I think a skilling mechanism can be established from the grassroots level up. We have got enough examples in tiny manners where people have been empowered to do all kinds of skills. But thus far we have focused a little bit on the cosmetic skills. I love handicrafts, but I say handicraft is a cosmetic skill. What is a non-cosmetic skill? Something that is the role of a person who comes to your doorstep to even sharpen a knife and give you a knife, because there aren't going to be enough knife sharpeners around. There are going to be electricians, as I said, and gas technicians, and everybody who are needed not only for India but for the whole world. Because we can become once again a very, very highly skilled India, wherein we do jobs which nobody else does in the world. This is how our our health inscription work, which we used to do, the medical inscription work that we used to do, transcription stuff, started that way. The whole world didn't want to do it, but we in India did it. So I think that's our edge. Let's not leave our hands-on edge and focus only on the mind edge. An infrastructure can actually be built, enough examples around.
All right. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out your time and
Thank
for
you.
speaking to
Thank
NewsX. Let me also introduce the other guests who have joined us on this panel. Bindu Dalmia, former chairperson NITI Aayog for Financial Inclusion and Literacy, Kalyani Shankar, senior journalist, and Rajya Lakshmi Joshi, who's a political analyst. I welcome you all, and I thank you for patiently waiting and taking out your time and to speak to NewsX. Let's start off with Bindu Dalmia. I want to understand from your perspective, today's framework heavily pushes forward the digital public infrastructure, or DPI, to ensure equity and dignity for all. Now, while our financial inclusion numbers via the JAM Trinity, which is Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, Mobile, are unmatched, there is a visible gap between digital banking access and actual financial literacy. How can NITI Aayog implement the next steps to make sure that passive account holders turn into active economic participants?
Good evening, ma'am. It's a very lovely question you've asked, and it's very thought-provoking. It's something I have felt for a long time, that while Jan Dhan accounts were introduced a long time back, that what about inclusion, banking inclusion and digital inclusion, etc. That is, just by opening a bank account, it's not going to make my account bigger. It has to go back to skilling, jobs, inclusion of women in the workforce, which are all job generating activities. We need to focus on employment and quality employment. I'm glad that the theme of today's meeting was inclusive human development, and it's a move away from just gauging from the metrics of GDP, because GDP alone doesn't tell the whole story. We need UNDP parameters of or the metrics of gauging human progress, which is through inequality adjusted HDI, gender development index, multidimensional poverty index. What I'm trying to say essentially is that till such time economic intensity doesn't improve, we are not going to see that that bump up in bank accounts. Just that is not going to help us. By opening a bank account, I'm not going to become rich. I need job opportunities. I need a wider framework for skilling, for inclusion in other forms, gender equality. We need more women in the workforce. We need not only ease of doing business, we need ease of living and to improve on those parameters.
Absolutely. Let me in fact also rope in Kalyani Shankar into this discussion. Ma'am, I want to understand from your perspective, because today in this meeting, we are seeing a host of leaders. We have the Prime Minister, we have his cabinet members, but we also have leaders of opposition over there. We have the chief ministers of various states which are sitting in the opposition as well. I want to understand, when we are talking about, Team India and moving towards this Viksit Bharat goal of 2047, the Prime Minister has pushed forward that you need to make sure that the center and the state work together despite political lines and fronts, and make sure that the development that the center is trying to implement is felt by each and every citizen.
Well, what you're saying is true. On today's meeting, particularly the Prime Minister takes every opportunity to talk to the chief ministers and tell them that we are a team, we should work together. This he had done it after demonetization, when COVID had come, and any time he finds a possibility of talking to them and trying to rope them all into a team. Whether all the chief ministers are agreeable for this or not, you don't know, because always somebody or the other will say, no, I'm not in the team. But still, they all have to depend on the center for the funds, and then they will have to say, at least politely, that why they don't want to do such a thing. And in any case, earlier I remember there used to be a planning commission. It was a predecessor to the NITI Aayog. That chairman was very powerful, and all the chief ministers had to go to his office to look for the annual plan allocation. But now that has gone and NITI Aayog has come. So that kind of relationship between the NITI Aayog and the chief ministers, I don't think, because the planning commission used to even make plans for each of the states, when to do what, all that kind of thing. But now we don't know what is happening there. And it's a good thing that chief ministers are able to give their view. I remember quite a few times that chief ministers like Jayalalitha, N.T. Ramarao, these people had walked out of the planning commission meeting, just to show that they are opposed to it. So that kind of thing is not happening now. But that I think it's a very good idea that for the chief ministers to know what the prime ministers have in mind and try to implement it for the sake of the country and for the sake of their states also.
Absolutely. In fact, let me also rope in Rajalakshmi Joshi. Ma'am, I want to understand from you, one of the core focus areas today has been to promote productive entrepreneurship. And like Kalyani Shankar ma'am also pointed out, the Prime Minister is saying that the states do need to come forward. You need to, make sure that you, encourage entrepreneurship. How can NITI Aayog design such an implementation of a roadmap that can transition all these, nano entrepreneurs in each state, there are self-help groups in each state. How can they become credit-worthy, scalable enterprises going forward?
Hello, Shivani, and it is good to see an all-woman panel here, apart from the earlier speaker, Mr. Pijur. But yes, see, the one thing that I have noticed is the focus is on women-led development. That is definitely there. And another thing is, I just want to, just make a point here that this is the first time actually that there is 100% participation of all chief ministers from all states, which is actually expected. They are expected to be there because you need to have a kind of a cooperative federalism where all the states are supposed to be equal partners and they are supposed to be a part of the growth journey. So you cannot have an optional kind of an attitude which some of the chief ministers used to adopt in the past few years. Like, for example, the chief ministers of Karnataka, that is Mr. Siddaramaiah, and the chief minister of Tamil Nadu, Mr. Stalin. Mr. Stalin had actually given it a miss a couple of times, and Mr. Siddaramaiah had made it a norm that he's not going to attend because they used to say that we are anyway not going to be given equal importance. So that was the kind of an attitude. In fact, I would say that if any of the states or any of the chief ministers feel that they are being neglected, in fact, it makes even more sense for them to actually attend these meetings and put across what their issues are and have a proper communication about what issues or what kind of projects they need more focus on. So that I think would be that actually should be the attitude. And I'm happy that today, at least the new chief minister, today you have 4 new chief ministers attending and you have 100% attendance. So all the chief ministers and union ministers and the LGs, so all of them are there in attendance, and the meeting is headed by the Prime Minister and of course the NITI Aayog Vice Chairperson. So then all of that actually makes for a very inclusive kind of a discussion. And so, what you are asking is absolutely correct. The approach is supposed to be a bottoms-up approach where the issues of the villages are also to be given importance, and that is how the entire country, there can be a development there, an all-round development with focus on SDGs, that is the sustainable development goals, and also on the quality of life and on skilling and making sure that all of this, there is a comprehensive kind of a development and not just in urban areas. So this, Shivani, when you have a vision for 2047, you have to plan certain goals and then plan backwards so that you are able to achieve those goals, and that is what is happening. So I'm glad that even now, in spite of the fact that we have lost all these years, at least now, even though there's a change in the name from Planning Commission to NITI Aayog, but then that doesn't mean that the chief ministers can give it a miss. So earlier, the people in the opposition, that is the BJP ruled states, were actually attending the Planning Commission meetings, and it is a sad fact that these the opposition leaders, they make it a political statement by not attending these meetings. In fact, today, if you look at it, all of them are actually putting across their views, they're putting across their suggestions, and actually a lot of things are being achieved. Absolutely. So that actually is the need of the day, Shivani.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad that at least now it is happening.
Absolutely. In fact, Bindu Dalmia ma'am, I want to understand, there a major theme today is aligning the state's vision with the national vision. But different states have vastly unequal fiscal health also. They have vastly different execution capabilities as well. How do we ensure that less industrialized states don't fall behind in the race, towards data-driven governance and digital financial adoption as well, when we talk about, states also coming to the fore?
Ma'am, today's meeting somehow gives one a lot more hope, because the sense one got was Team India was today coming together. And I attribute this to the recent elections, the force of Prime Minister Modi's 12-year breaking all milestones, the fact that it is a more powerful center, and that BJP's footprint is today in 21 states. Now, 21 states chief ministers will not boycott these meetings, unlike previously when, as my co-panelist rightly said, whether it was Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, for that matter, Mamata Banerjee. I see greater chances of success and cooperative federalism happening on this platform for which it was meant. The idea was, the whole point of NITI Aayog was ideation, cross-fertilization of ideas between chief ministers to follow the best practices, the global best practices, to learn from each other, to ask for their demands. It was a platform for dialogue. So I see greater cooperation between the center and states. And this has happened through dialogue, which one saw today, whether it was Mr. Dhami, or whether it was Rekha Gupta ji, or who were the others? There were 3-4 of the chief, Andhra Pradesh CM, all of them, they were having productive dialogues and addressing their concerns, whether they wanted more funding for infrastructure, for tourism, a greater share in the pie of central taxes. These are things that they cannot address it in silos. They need to talk about it in a unified manner, which was what NITI Aayog was for. So, to answer your question, because today the footprint of BJP is 21 states, chances of collaboration and cooperation are much more. And those who don't want to participate, so big deal, then they're going to lose out on dialogue, on productive dialogue with their peers and their counterparts. Because when central ministers are sitting there, chief ministers are sitting, it is the best platform to talk across the table and come to conclusions.
Very, very valid point over there. Let me also get in a word from Kalyani Shankar, ma'am. I want to, ma'am, from your perspective, now NITI Aayog has evolved significantly from a policy think tank into this architect of, long-term implementation blueprints. Do you believe that the institution currently possesses, the institutional leverage or accountability mechanisms that are needed to ensure that states actually stick to these long-term outcomes, or does it remain advisory at best?
Whom are you asking?
You, ma'am.
Okay. The question is that NITI Aayog must review the performance of each state. That used to be there in Planning Commission also. So while doing the reviewing, then they can find out the faults, and then find out what the chief ministers have not done, what are the things which they should have done, and their future ideas. All these would come in that discussion and the review. But I don't know whether it has been done now, but of course I'm sure they would have done. It's not as if even a cabinet prime minister gets a review of all the ministries. So they should do that. And one other thing is that chief ministers have a platform there in the NITI Aayog meeting to give out their ideas, and if they have any novel idea, other chief ministers can also pick up, and even the center can pick up. So that kind of possibility is there in the NITI Aayog meeting today, and it was just for it should have been a longer, I feel, because there are 29 chief ministers and the central ministers don't have to talk much. But then these things, they could have done it for longer days. But anyway, whatever is done, it's done. That's all, I would say.
I would hope it's more frequent that they have these sittings.
That's true. That's true. Frequent and longer, both.
Longer, yes, definitely. Like Parliament. Like Parliament should be longer duration, and same thing, because these are very decisive platforms, decision-making platforms.
I don't know if you recall that Planning Commission meetings used to be for the whole day, morning to evening, and each one will have the half an hour, 45-minute slot for chief ministers. But here, God knows how much time is given to the chief ministers. I remember once Jayalalitha walking out of the meeting saying that she was not given enough time. So this kind of complaints were also there. But the Team India should work, and that's where the Prime Minister is giving a pep talk to the Team India.
Right.
I think they should all come together and then work for the progress of the country. It's not for the state alone, but for the country also.
So I believe all the panelists do believe that we are on the right path, but we need to make certain changes like meeting more often, having longer durations of such time-bound meetings that take place. But I thank you all for your valuable perspective on this issue and for taking out your time and for speaking to NewsX. With that, viewers, we are slipping into a commercial.